The Story of Theseus. The Birth of Theseus. In the year 1300, a son was born to King Aegeus and his wife Aethra. He was a fine boy, and they named him Theseus. Just a year earlier, Aegeus had met Aethra in her city of Troezen, where she was a princess. For the last year they had stayed there together, but now King Aegeus had to leave and return to his own kingdom, and it was decided that Aethra would not go with him, but would instead stay in the city where she was born. King Aegeus was deeply sad about leaving his wife and son, but that was his fortune. Before leaving, he walked around the castle with his wife. Soon they came upon a huge rock, and Aegeus used his great strength to lift it. He then dug a small hole where the rock had been, placed his sword and shoes in it, and then pushed the rock back over the hole. After doing this, he said to his wife, "My love, I have wished my whole life for a son who would become brave and strong, and rule my kingdom when I become old. Raise Theseus into a great man. Do not tell him that his father is a king. Instead, wait until he is old enough to move this stone. Once he is wearing my shoes and holding my sword, tell him the truth about his father and send him to meet me." Aegeus and Aethra then kissed one another and walked to the shore. Boats were waiting for the king there, and he got onto the largest ship and left Troezen forever. Aethra cried softly as she watched his ship sail away and held baby Theseus in her arms tightly.
"You will always be the son of a king,"
she whispered into her little child's ear. Theseus grew up quickly. It was clear that he would one day be a strong man. As he grew, his mother told him that his father was the god Poseidon, and that he would one day become a great hero because of his good blood. She raised and taught her boy according to the tradition of kings in Troezen, and provided him with many famous teachers of arts and war. His knowledge grew quickly, and his skill with the sword could not be beaten by any other young boy in the kingdom. One day, when Theseus was still a boy, the great hero Hercules came to visit the castle. Hercules was wearing the skin of a lion that he had killed, and when the castle guards saw him, they thought that he was a real lion and ran away. Only Theseus was unafraid and stood there with a sword in his hand, prepared to fight the animal. "Well done, young boy," said Hercules, laughing. "One day you will become a great hero, as strong as I." Indeed, Theseus grew up to be a very strong and brave man, and was unusually smart as well. On Theseus's 16th birthday, his mother took him to his father's stone.
"Can you lift this stone, Theseus?"
she asked. Theseus lifted the rock easily and found the sword and the shoes that King Aegeus had left there for him.
"Those are gifts left here by your father,"
his mother said.
"He is the leader of a great kingdom over the mountains."
Theseus was surprised to hear this and said, "But, mother, isn't my father the god Poseidon?"
"No, my son," she replied. "Your father is a real man, just like you are. Go to the capital, Athens, and show this sword to the king. He has waited a long time for you to grow up and hopes that you follow him as Athens' next king."
Theseus was excited to hear this news. Though he had enjoyed thinking that he was the son of a god, he was even happier to know that he had a flesh-and-blood father whom he could meet and love. He decided to leave for Athens at once. At that time, most people traveled to Athens by boat because the road to the capital was filled with many dangerous giants. These giants were all very cruel and violent. They enjoyed killing men just for fun. Aethra told her son about all of the terrible giants who waited on the road and asked him not to travel that way. But Theseus told her that he wished to be a great hero and would kill all the giants and make the road safe for others. I will bring my father his sword covered with the blood of the giants, Theseus told his mother. Whatever she said, Aethra could not convince him to go to Athens by another way. Theseus packed his things, kissed his mother, and left for Athens. The Four Giants. Before Theseus had traveled a full day, he met the first giant. This giant was called Periphetes. Periphetes carried a giant club covered with sharp nails and waited in the middle of the road for travelers to pass. Theseus did not slow his walk as he approached the giant. He only reached down for his sword and pulled it from his belt. When he was only a few steps away, the giant raised his weapon and swung it down at Theseus. The young hero jumped quickly to the side, and the giant missed. The weapon was so heavy that the giant fell down when he missed hitting Theseus. Theseus saw his opportunity, jumped on the giant's back, and pushed his sword through the back of his huge head. Periphetes never stood up again. Theseus was proud to have killed his first great enemy and took Periphetes' club with him to remember the fight. After another day of travel, Theseus met an old man who warned him of a dangerous giant on the road ahead. "Do not go any further. There is a giant ahead named Sinis, who is very cruel and tricky. He will ask you to help him bend a great pine tree down to the ground. When you have pulled the tree down, he will ask you if you are grasping the tree strongly. When you say yes, he will release his part of the tree, and you will be thrown into the air and killed on the rocks below." Theseus thanked the old man for his warning and continued on his journey. Soon he saw the giant trying to bend a great pine tree down to the ground. When he approached, the giant said, "Young man, you look quite strong. Would you help me pull this tree down to the ground?" Theseus agreed, and the two men pulled the tree down to the ground easily. When the top of the tree was touching the earth, the giant asked, "Do you have a strong hold of the tree?" "Not yet," said Theseus, and released the tree before the giant could let go. The giant flew into the air and came down on a pile of sharp rocks. His head split open on the rocks, and he died instantly. The third giant Theseus met was named Sciron. Sciron lived near a high cliff over the sea and was famous for kicking men off the cliff and sending them to their deaths. However, Theseus had heard of this giant before. When a man passed by, Sciron would demand that they stop to wash his feet. When the man bent down in front of his feet, the giant would kick them back into the sea. The sea was full of large and hungry fish that devoured them. Theseus was sure he could find a way to defeat this giant. "You may not pass until you wash my feet," yelled the giant when Theseus approached. "Oh, certainly, great giant," said Theseus, and the giant sat on a rock by the cliff. Theseus stood in front of him and pretended to reach down to pick up a bucket of water, but just then pulled out his sword and cut off the giant's feet. Sciron yelled out in pain and fell to the ground. "Listen to me now, you cruel giant," yelled Theseus. "I will cut off your head as well if you do not wash my feet." The giant was afraid of Theseus now and bent down to wash his feet. Just then Theseus kicked up his leg, and the giant fell off the cliff into the sea. The hungry fish found the giant and ate him quickly. Then Theseus continued his journey toward Athens. Now there was only one more giant to defeat, and his name was Procrustes. Procrustes was the most cruel of all the giants. He invited men into his house to rest, but when they were inside, they found that one of his beds was very short and the other was very long. If they lay down in the short bed, Procrustes would take an axe off the wall and cut off their legs so they would fit. If they chose the long bed, Procrustes would tie their arms and legs with rope and pull them until their bodies broke in half. But Theseus had discovered all of this before meeting the giant and planned to kill him for his cruel ways. When Theseus was only a few days' travel away from Athens, he met Procrustes outside of the giant's house. "Please enter and rest, brave young man," said the giant. Theseus entered the giant's house and went into the room with the 2 beds. Before the giant knew what was happening, Theseus hit him in the head with his club and pushed him down onto the small bed. "It seems that this bed is too short for you," Theseus said while pulling the giant's axe off the wall. He then lifted the axe above his head, brought it down, and cut off Procrustes' legs. As the giant screamed in pain, Theseus moved his injured body over to the long bed. "This bed is too long for you, giant," he said. "I will just have to make you longer." Theseus tied the ropes around Procrustes and pulled him into 2 pieces. Now, all the giants were defeated. Theseus continued on his way to Athens. Theseus meets his father. By the time that Theseus arrived in Athens, his father, King Aegeus, had heard of the young hero who had killed the giants and made the road safe for travelers. The king sent a servant to find the young hero and invite him to the castle. Once found, Theseus accepted the invitation and followed the servant into the castle's main hall. Theseus saw his father from the far end of the hall and was at once filled with great love for the old man. He walked up to the king bravely, pulled out his sword, took off his shoes, and put them down at the king's feet. When the king looked down and saw these things, his heart filled with joy and his eyes filled with tears. To the surprise of all of his guards and servants, he stood up and put his arms around the young man. With tears running down his face, Aegeus said, "Son, you have finally returned to me. I have waited for 16 years to see you again, and now I see that you have become a great hero. You will live here with me now and will one day become king yourself." Indeed, both father and son were very happy that day and lived for many months together. All went well until one morning the young prince woke up to find his father very upset and many of the castle servants crying. "What's wrong, dear father? Why are you so sad?" he asked. "Oh, my son, the soldiers from Crete have arrived. They have come to collect 7 of our young men and women and take them away." "Where will they take them?" asked Theseus. "There is a terrible monster that lives in Crete called the Minotaur. He is a giant man with the head of a bull. Long ago, King Minos of Crete put the Minotaur in a huge maze called the Labyrinth. This maze is so large and difficult that no one who enters can ever find their way out. Every 9 years, King Minos sends men to Athens to collect young men and women to feed to the Minotaur." "But why must we give the Minotaur our people? Why doesn't King Minos kill his own people instead?" Theseus asked angrily. Aegeus hung his head sadly. "You see, Theseus, many years ago we hosted some games to test the athletic ability of young men in the land. Among the athletes who participated in these games was the eldest son of King Minos of Crete, Androgeus. Androgeus won many of the events, but the next day he was found murdered. Minos believed that we, the Athenians, had killed his son and demanded that every 9 years we send him 7 men and 7 women at the age that his son had been to be fed to the Minotaur. This was to be the payment for his son's murder. When I refused to send our young men and women, King Minos started a war with Athens, and because his army was stronger, we were defeated. So I had no choice. I had to agree to send our people to the Minotaur." Theseus learned that this was the 3rd time that the Cretans had come for a collection, and the Athenians were all very unhappy. Every man with a teenage son or daughter had to draw a number out of a box to determine who would lose his child. Many people were angry because King Aegeus would not send his own son as a sacrifice. They believed that he was the cause of all their trouble. Theseus understood the people's anger, so he offered to go to Crete as one of the young people for the Minotaur. All the people of Athens admired the young man for this act. His father tried to change his mind, but the young hero was determined. "Do not fear, father," Theseus said. "I will kill this monster, and Athens will no longer have to send its young men and women to Crete. Be very careful, my son. If you die, I will not be able to live myself," said Aegeus. "Promise me one thing. When you return from Crete, hang white sails on this ship so that I will know that you are victorious." "I promise, father," said the young hero. The ship had black sails while taking the young people to Crete to show the sadness of the task. King Aegeus gave the sailors white sails and ordered them to use the white sails on the return journey instead of the black ones if Theseus succeeded in killing the Minotaur. When the ship arrived in Crete, King Minos ordered that the young men and women stand in a line in front of him. When he saw that one of the young women was very beautiful, he made rude advances and said that she could live if she became one of his wives. Theseus jumped to defend the girl and said that no Athenian would marry a man of Crete. This made the king angry, and he stared at the young man with red eyes. He then took a ring off his finger and threw it into the sea. The king spoke coldly to Theseus. "If you find my ring, I will set this woman free. If not, then I will take her as my bride and do whatever I want with her." Theseus jumped instantly into the sea and disappeared for many minutes. Just when King Minos believed that he was dead, Theseus's head appeared above the water. He returned to the beach carrying the king's ring in his hand. The king was both angry and surprised to see this. He was afraid that Theseus was some kind of god come to punish him. Because of his fear, he decided to keep his promise and let the girl go. He then ordered his soldiers to bring the rest of the young people, including Theseus, to the palace. Theseus and the Minotaur. King Minos sat in his high chair and watched the young Athenians enter his great hall. "You all know that you will never leave the labyrinth alive," said Minos. "The Minotaur will find you and kill you one by one." "But what if we kill the Minotaur first, King Minos?" said Theseus. Minos laughed loudly. "Kill the Minotaur?" he said. "Why, if you kill the Minotaur, I promise to let all of you go." "I will kill him," said Theseus. "Just let me take my sword into the labyrinth, and I will face the monster." "Oh, so the lucky swimmer is now a hero too," said Minos. He was still laughing. "I am Theseus, son of King Aegeus. If I kill your monster, do you promise to let us return to Athens?" "All right. Tomorrow morning you may try to kill my monster. If you escape the labyrinth, all of you may leave." Ariadne, King Minos's daughter, was standing next to her father as the men spoke. She thought Theseus was very handsome and admired his courage so much that she fell in love with him instantly. She secretly decided to help the young hero. During the night, Ariadne quietly went into the prisoner's room and awoke Theseus. She explained to Theseus that the Minotaur was not his only danger. "Who are you?" Theseus said, and admired her beauty.
"I am Ariadne, the daughter of the king, and I am here to help you. Listen to me. You will enter the labyrinth easily, and I believe that you are a great hero and will kill the Minotaur. But even if you do that, you will never find your way out of the maze. You see, even the Minotaur is a prisoner here. But I know how you can escape the labyrinth. If I tell you how to get out of the labyrinth, will you promise to marry me and take me with you to Athens?"
Theseus promised the princess that he would do so, and then Ariadne gave him a ball of thin string and explained to him what to do. The next morning, when Theseus entered the labyrinth, he tied one end of the string to a rock near the door. As he walked deeper into the maze, he let the string out slowly. Theseus walked deeper and deeper into the maze, always moving towards the center where the Minotaur lived. The bones of many people and animals lay on the ground. Many of the walls were covered with dry blood. Eventually, Theseus heard the sound of heavy breathing and the loud footsteps of a large animal. He stopped walking and waited for the Minotaur to appear around the corner. As soon as the monster saw Theseus, it put its head down and ran at Theseus with its horns. Theseus reached out his strong arms and grabbed the horns with his powerful hands. The Minotaur turned its head quickly, back and forth, trying to get Theseus off, but it could not. Then Theseus used all his strength and turned the Minotaur's neck until it almost broke. The Minotaur fell, and before it could get back up again, Theseus pushed his sword into its mouth and all the way through its head. He then followed the string back to the entrance of the labyrinth. When Theseus came out of the labyrinth with a bloody sword in his hands, the other Athenians began crying tears of joy. By killing the Minotaur, Theseus had not only saved his own life, but theirs as well. King Minos was very angry to see Theseus come out of the labyrinth alive. However, because of his amazing deed, the king was now certain that Theseus was protected by the gods. He let the Athenians go free, and thus Athens' debt to Crete was ended. The next day Theseus kept his promise to Ariadne and took her with him. When King Minos learned that his daughter had left with Theseus, he sent his ships to capture the Athenians. But Theseus had left very early, and his ship was too far ahead. After following for just a day, Minos' ships gave up and returned to Crete. Everyone was so happy returning to Athens that they had a great party and drank all the wine on the ship. The next day they stopped on the island of Naxos and went in search of fresh water. While on the island, Ariadne walked around picking flowers to give to Theseus. She soon fell asleep on the beach in the warm sun. When Theseus saw her sleeping there, a strange thing happened. His heart turned cold to her, and he ordered his people to return to the ship and leave the island without her. Ariadne awoke just in time to see the ship disappear from sight. Her heart broke, and she cried until night fell. When the gods heard Ariadne cry, they became angry and decided to punish Theseus for his selfishness. They made all the people on the ship forget to hang the white sails. As they approached Athens, the black sails still hung high. Since Theseus had left, his father had spent every day sitting on a high cliff over the sea, watching the water and waiting for the ship's return. When he saw the black sails hung on the ship, his heart broke just as Ariadne's had. He had prayed all his life that his son would rule the kingdom after he died, and now he did not have anyone to rule the kingdom after he died. He stood up and walked over to the edge of the cliff, looked once more at the black sails on the ship, and let himself fall into the sea far below. When Theseus finally arrived in Athens, he expected a large party to be going on in celebration of the safe return of the young men and women. Instead, all the people had sad faces, and Theseus was greeted only by the dead body of his father, lying on the beach where the waves had pushed it.